Good morning, Armor Down. I hope you had a nice weekend. What a couple days. I mean, last Thursday was just the beginning, and now all of a sudden the whole world is different. The situation in Ukraine is still going strong, and I'll tell you, I'm listening to it and paying attention to it and watching every day, and it's just incredible, absolutely incredible. So this week I want to talk about the concept of, it's not a new concept, and most of the stuff I bring up is not new. This is stuff that's been talked about before. So the kind of the slant I'm going to give to it is calling it from flow to form and form to flow. In the kind of the archives of kind of wisdom thinking, awareness thinking, the ancient sages, things like that, it's been described as form and formlessness. So that's very much in the Buddhist tradition. There's the yin yang, which is very much the Taoist tradition. So this idea of flow becoming form and form becoming flow isn't particularly new, but I want to add my spin on it just to kind of add on to where we've come. So what we've gone through over these weeks, right? If you're interacting with the content regularly by scanning the QR code on the cushion, where we've come is we've looked at the brain as this very complex, dynamic, predictive processor that is far more than just a passive agent sitting inside your brain. So we've gone through that. We've looked at, okay, if the brain is actively doing things beyond your own awareness of what it's doing, what do you do? So then you go through the 4 bells, you learn how to armor down. And once you learn how to armor down, you develop the capacity to have agency over kind of the default patterns which show up in the human experience called things like ego. We develop the capacity to have agency over what we choose and how we interact with what we choose. So let's just say you're starting to get this and you're starting to have more agency. Well, what does that mean? Well, basically what it means is you're starting to become aware of what's going on inside you. So think of 3rd and 4th bell more as flow, okay? 3rd and 4th bells flow. So flow is what your intentionality is, what your feelings are, what your deep held beliefs are. That kind of flow is what's inside of you. So if you're thinking about having a conversation with someone, the conversation you're having them isn't a conversation of language by itself. It's a conversation of a flow that's existing between you and the other, and the way that flow is being expressed is through the form of language. Okay, so imagine you're in a dance with someone. It's not just that you're moving with someone, it's you're beginning to flow with them, vibe with them. That's the flow. We know this all the time. It's that rhythm, it's that flow, it's that, oh man, you just feel it, you fall in. There's all kinds of language about this. There's love at first sight, there's endorphins, there's all these kinds of things that kind of give language to this aspect of connecting, an aspect of flowing into something that's hard to qualify. Now we give it form, so the form shows up in all these different manifestations. Now, that place, that 4th bell, I asked you that question. What is the thing that's making the decision? What is the thing that is choosing agency over ego? What's the chooser? Well, that may be the origin of the flow. And so the chooser kind of begins to recognize, makes the choice, so it becomes flow. Then flow begins to move out. Now, the brain is creating form, whether you realize it or not. That's the predictive processor. It's creating the form that you perceive. The form that you perceive, the colors that you perceive, your brain is turning light wavelengths, okay? Light wavelengths into color. It's kind of like I said last week. It's not, words don't have meaning because they're in a dictionary. Words have meaning because we use them. Color isn't color because color's out there. Color is color because the brain perceives the wavelength. Now, how about the fact that the brain can't perceive all wavelengths? So what you've got is you've got stuff going on outside of your awareness that you can't even interact with because you can't perceive it. So what I mean when flow becomes form is flow comes through you, and for me it's heart centered, right? This is where flow comes from. Flow comes, it's always coming, it's always happening, it's always forming, it's always manifesting. The brain is taking that flow and predicting what's happening around you, and then what's happening around you is getting influenced, or you're getting influenced by what's happening around you through your senses. Okay, your senses are then creating what are called prediction errors, and so your brain is restructuring how it's creating the form around you. So flow becomes form. Now form then turns back into flow. So think about it like this. All right, when you go into the military, when you go into basic training, it knocks out everything you've understood about form. All your form gets knocked out. And then it points to the flow within you and says, you've got this thing inside of you, this human spirit, it's just another word for it, that can be turned into this lethal fighting force. So your form is wiped out. Your hair's cut off. You're all given the same clothing. There's a whole new hierarchy that you have to understand. That's a whole new form. And the form is created. So once that form is created, then it's activated. So it's activated by repetition over and over and over again. So then the form becomes a flow, right? So you start to, it's no longer, what's that rank? Is that a sergeant or is that a corporal? It's what's that? Is that a captain? No, that's a lieutenant. Is that a first lieutenant or is that a second lieutenant? So all of a sudden it's now like, boom, boom. What up, Sergeant? Hey, sir. All that becomes form right away. You know how to position of attention. You know how to march. All these new forms now take on a flow, right? So you do them automatically. And so that's the brain, right? So if you're actively engaged, what your brain is doing, okay, your brain is creating and responding constantly, okay? Flow becomes the form, and then the form becomes the flow. Flow becomes form, forms becomes flow. Last week we talked about having some agency around this, okay, having some awareness around this. And so what I want to do is when we go into 4 bells, I want to point out while the bells are taking place, the form and the flow. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to do that in the context of the strike, okay? So I haven't put a lot of emphasis on the strike of the bell. I've talked a lot about the bells themselves and what they represent inside the flow of the bell. But what each bell creates, okay, each strike, that's a hit, right? Each strike is going to jar kind of whatever form and flow that you're in and kind of restart the moment. So each bell kind of restarts the moment, and then you kind of flow into the bell, whatever the bell is. So bell 1, you're going to flow into your senses and you're going to move around. So that's the flow. You're kind of moving, awareness, flowing around, move into the body, move into that form. Okay. So the bell is going to be that kind of structure, right? That structure that kind of takes the form and boom, takes the flow and brings it into a form that you can be aware of. Because again, we're dealing with the mind here. We're dealing with the spirit here. We're dealing with things that are very hard to just kind of interact with in a simple fashion. These are also the things that are kind of infinite. Like this isn't the form of the human body. This is the form of the human beingness. This is the type of stuff that is forever stuff. So it's tricky. So what we do is we break that flow, that soul, that spirit, whatever you want to call it. We break it down into chunks that we can look at a little bit more constructively. So anyway, what I'm going to emphasize here is the strike, right? So the strike is going to be a little bit more powerful, and it's meant to kind of pierce. It's meant to pierce your flow and kind of jar you a little bit. It's meant to do that. And in that, it's like, boom, whoa. And you come back to where you are. You come back. So we're coming back into that moment, coming back into that presence, reconnecting and going through each step. So go ahead and get yourself settled. Oop. Get another sip of coffee. Before we start bell one, I just want you to become present and see what kind of flow you're working with today. Like right now, right in this instant, where's your energy at? Is it mostly pretty quiet, or are you like me a little bit where it's like, what's happening in Ukraine? Like your kind of awareness, the energy of you, the energy that you have, right? It's kind of moving. Maybe it's moving into the future, right? It's what's going to happen, or maybe there's something that you're really, really thinking about. So just kind of notice where that is, and now the strike is going to break that up. Boom, just cancel that out, and let's get into the senses. Let's get into the form of the senses. Here we go. If you got your eyes open, light and shadow, color or shapes. Your brain's got an infinite capacity to do whatever you want it to do. So you say, brain, mind, let's go shapes. All of a sudden, circles show up everywhere. We look for triangles, light and shadow. Your flow taking the form of sight. You're going to shift totally from that form into sound. What do you hear? Where do you hear what you hear? Let's go to touch. Touch and temperature. Smell. Taste in the mouth. Let's go to bell 2. Ground. What makes up your ground? So I'm in crisscross applesauce. So I've got the outer edge of my left heel, left foot, left pinky toe, left shin, left knee. My right ground includes the top of my right foot, top of the toes, kind of the front right of my right shin. Then I feel my rear end on the cushion. I feel the thickness of my ground under my center. It's like kind of right around right at the anus. That's where most of my weight is. I feel a little bit more grounded on the left side than the right. So I'm going to just shift just a little bit. Feel that ground. And then right from the very center, right from the butthole, I'm going to come straight up into the core. Now, right away, I'm noticing my core tight. So I'm going to let that out. Second I let that out, I can feel the fabric of clothing on my skin, softening the sides. First thing I notice when I move up to the heart space are the openness of my sleeves. I can feel the coldness moving up my sleeves into my upper arms. I feel the weight of my chest. I feel spread across the chest. I can see my chest space in the bottom of my visual field. I feel the top of my shoulder blades. I can feel the broadness of my chest all the way down to the kind of pointedness of my ground. I can feel the connection between the spine at the base all the way up to the heart space. I just noticed a sense of hunger. Throat space. I can feel breath moving mostly down. I can feel the breath going down my throat. Now I'm noticing my nose, glasses. I can notice the top of my goatee, the mustache of my goatee, in my lower vision, my lower field of vision. Putting all my attention on the nostril, both nostrils. I can feel air coming in the nostrils. Top of the head, top of the spine. I'm just sitting with the quiet of the body, the settledness, the flow inside the form inside the flow is balanced. All right, here comes bell 3. Let's go inside to the breath. That last strike felt like a knife, felt flat and sharp. I could feel it kind of cutting in. First thing I noticed in my insides was a kind of a burp. Next thing I noticed inside is mucus in the throat. Chest space moving. Location of the breath is belly. Directions forward and back. Again, there's this left-sided emphasis. There's this right side feels kind of like dead space. When I breathe into the belly, it feels like the breath is moving forward forward and to the left. It's interesting. It feels like the breath is moving forward and to the left. There's a lot of sensation on the left side. The right side feels, just doesn't feel like anything. It feels empty of feeling. Even the right side of the belly, I feel the belly expanding, breath moving forward and back. All right, I'm going to go big, expand down and out. Really make the experience of the breath grow in size. Feel little pops. Yeah, there's a tightness on the left, a tightness on the right back side of the body. The breath feels a little bit tight there, or it's not so much the breath feels tight there. It's like there's a hold there. So the breath is moving, the breath is expanding more on the left side than the right side. There's a kind of resistance on the right side. And take the breath up into the chest area. Feel tightness in the jaw when I do that. So flow and form, right? So I'm going to take the flow. I'm going to try to stay as soft as I can in the form of my upper body. So I'm going to see what it feels like to really concentrate on the softness of form. Take the flow of the breath up without tightening. What I notice is the muscles, when I soften my jaw, the muscles are deeper that kind of expand or pull the diaphragms. You got 3 diaphragms: throat, heart, and pelvis. And so the pull of the breath when I take it up, relaxing the jaw, the effort of the expansion of the breath up is layered. Something I'm going to be aware of today is I'm often tensing these outer forms, these outer layers when I'm breathing, and I don't notice it. So I'm going to pay closer attention to that today. Let's go in the upper back, see what that feels like. I'm breathing through my mouth now just to kind of play around with that. Changing the form, changes the flow, changes the flow, changes the form. Your thoughts are flow. So if you think upper back and breathe upper back, you'll feel the flow going into the form of the upper back. So this form and flow experience is very much active in every moment. And if you're aware of it, you can kind of participate. Otherwise, you just kind of reinforce the patterns, and then the flow becomes the form and the form starts to flow. You don't want form. You don't necessarily want tension as the form that begins to take over the flow. All right, I'm going to just settle for a moment before going into fourth bell. Feel for the heart. Relax the form of the body so that the flow of the heart creates the flow inside the body. So see if you can relax the form of everything other than the heart, and then connect to the beating of the heart and let the heart move the body. I really got to soften to do this. May I be at peace in my mind. May I be at peace in my body. May I be at peace in my heart. I'm going to repeat that 2 more times with my inner voice. May you be at peace in your mind. May you be at peace in your body. May you be at peace in your heart. May we be at peace in our minds. May we be at peace in our hearts. May we be at peace in our bodies. Having an intentional finish, 2 rounds of breath, second exhale finishes. So mindfulness is recognizing the flow and the form with equanimity. And to recognize the flow and the form with equanimity is to have agency. And then to practice is to practice agency. And to practice agency is to practice interacting with flow and form and recognizing what flow becomes form and what form needs to be understood as flow. And so when you're doing these things unconsciously, when you're unconscious of anger, or you're unconscious of fear, or you're unconscious of doubt or shame or guilt or whatever, when you're unconscious of all that stuff, it becomes the form that you see. And then the form that you see becomes the flow of the way you live. And so it's this circular phenomena. And what you're hopefully understanding is it's not just circular phenomena intellectually, it's circular phenomena with your brain. And if you recognize your brain as more than just a passive thing, if you recognize your brain in the context which we're encouraging for you to recognize it as this predictive processor, then what you're thinking on a regular basis is literally showing up as the form of the world around you. It's what you literally see. It's what you literally feel. It's what you literally interact with. It's not necessarily the real condition of your existence. You don't see the world as it is, you see the world as you are. So that's form and flow, flow becoming form, form becoming flow. And what mindfulness does is it kind of zeroes that out. The present moment is kind of the zero of this phenomenon. And from this place, you develop your agency. And the cool part is the other side of this is that, an open heart becomes a regular flow that starts to become a regular form. And so where there was once fear, there's now compassion. Where there was once indifference, there's love. Where there was once strife, there's harmony. So the gift, right, of form becomes flow and flow becomes form is that an open heart driving the flow then can become form. And then the feeling of the open heart, that flow becomes, or that form of open-heartedness then becomes your flow. And so it the same thing that kind of can spin you down or spin you into a place of kind of closed offness, so that it actually becomes easier and easier and easier to become closed, is the same process that facilitates the ability to become more and more open. So we'll go a little bit deeper into this on Thursday, but thank you for interacting with me on this fine morning, and see you later. Armor Down.